Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is part two of our recording. We had reached the part where you are now in a bus. You have
Going up to Murray.
you've actually reached crossed Pindi. You're heading towards Murray, and you are shoveling. Snow is being shoveled on the way. You said.
Yes.
So then,
Yes, so much snow we used to have in those days. And people would be shoveling, and then we'd come a little up, and there would be people selling oranges, khatte. So we'd be allowed to buy, I think, an orange, or we were given an orange each so that we wouldn't get sick on the way after having those 2 eggs and toast and butter and all that. Some people would be throwing up, and most of us were good at traveling, so we were off. And then at one place there's a waterfall, and I remember the fragrance of the pine trees as we went up, and the cool breeze. And the moment the cold began, I think my tears would start falling, because then it felt I was cut off from home. So I think at that point I would begin crying a lot, missing home. And it was me who wanted to go, so I dare not show tears over there.
and this was during the first year, or now you're talking
Every
about
year was the
every
same.
year.
Every year
So
was the
this
same
this
till I
happened
finished
every
school.
year, that you would go to Hyderabad, you would go to this family, you
Yes.
would go to from Hyderabad then to Lahore,
Yes.
then from Lahore you would go to Pindi, where you would have the shower at the train station, you would have your breakfast, get on a bus, and then
Same
go to
routine,
Murray.
Same routine.
Every year.
Every year till I was
Okay.
there.
Every year till you were
The
there.
same lady, and still I was never at ease being with her.
Never at ease.
Never at ease, and never wanted to be there with her.
Oh.
I don't know why I was never comfortable
With that lady?
with that lady and her children. I never got friendly with them, or what, I don't know. I must have grown up and they still were kids.
Oh.
So
I remember there was a story you once had told me about you traveling to a place where you didn't want to stay at that lady's
I'll
place.
tell you that. That was on our way home.
Oh, was it the first year?
No, it must have been the first year. Yes.
So then what happened? Say that,
Yeah,
say
I'll
the
tell
parts
you.
so it'll be
I'll
interesting. Yeah.
tell you. Coming back, now the lady wouldn't pick us up. We had to, how was it that somebody was to come and pick me up from Lahore. Till Lahore our batch came, but I think this lady wouldn't come to pick us up in Lahore, so we had to find a way home by ourselves. I had to find a home by myself. Maybe they had migrated, I don't know what it was, I can't recall. So my father wrote and said that one of the uncles, Yusuf Bhai, probably would come and fetch me from this lady's home in Lahore. But as he couldn't make it the day our batch arrived, I'd have to stay the night with this person. And I had stayed with her before, or had met her before with my father, I think, because I was familiar with her name and with her home address, which I remember to this day.
What was it?
It was One Golf Road, Lahore. Can you imagine? One Golf Road. And when we got off in Lahore, now we were all going home. This lady didn't come and fetch me because my father said that I will come to her home. So they were waiting. They knew what time the train arrived. They knew what time I should have been at the gate. So they were waiting at the gate, husband and wife. And now my teacher said, it was Miss White in a tonga of Lahore. Tonga meant a horse carriage.
Buggy, yeah.
And we were on it, and we went along, and she said, now where is your friend living? I said, I can't recall. I knew perfectly well where she was living. I can't recall. She said, don't you remember anything? I said, no, I don't. So she, I think, guided the Tonga wala to the residential area. And I knew that area. I don't know how I knew it, but it seemed very familiar. And she said, do you think this looks familiar? I said, I don't think so. Although I knew exactly what it was and where I should have been. But I'd much rather have gone home with her to the vicarage and stayed with some of the girls whose parents were dead and gone. They were being put up there. So I said, two children are being put up there, why not me third one till my father came? Why should I live with other people? But that was the rule of that time, and so it had to be done. So this poor lady, this poor teacher, going to in a horse carriage, trying to find my home, and I just refused to tell her the number. Finally, when she coaxed me, I think it might have been a Gulf Road. Number, you don't remember the number? No, I don't remember. One, I don't remember. A liar. So I went on and on and on, and what do I see? As we came to number one, those people were waiting outside. Almost died, almost died. And they knew how naughty I'd been because they said, you didn't remember number one? I said,
So you had to stay overnight till?
I had to stay there overnight till my uncle turned up the next day, probably after half
Which
a
uncle
day.
was this?
Yusuf Bhai came.
Oh, and then he would take you back on the train
On the train.
back to Karachi.
Karachi.
Oh. So now that you became familiar with going to school and school was a part of your life and this was your routine, tell me a little bit about how your school days were. Like I remember you telling us that when you were little, there was, and when you were older, that you were responsible for 8 children.
Yes.
So when you were little, who was responsible for you and how was the routine?
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? What about how things were? Like where did you stay? What was your dorm room like?
Oh, I remember that. Not as a child, I don't remember the dorm room as a child. But the next time that I came, immediately I think we were put in charge because I must have been 13 by then. So we were put in charge of groups. We were grouped up for children, but only for two weeks at a time. And in that, the older ones were given a cubicle in that dorm. There was a dormitory. In the cubicle meant we were given curtains. I don't know what good that was, but just to make us feel grown up probably, so that we could change and dress in privacy. I think that was the only reason. And
So cubicles meaning there were like curtains?
curtains,
Oh.
just curtains around our bed.
Each bed had a curtain around?
No, just the prefect.
Just a
The
prefect.
little ones didn't.
Oh.
So that we were given that privilege, I think, because
Within the room. So within the room, there was you as the head and
there were
all your people under you.
about 5 beds one side, 5 beds one side, or 4 beds one side, 4 beds
And you were
one
in
side.
charge of everybody there.
Of those 8, yes.
So what was
absolutely.
your responsibility?
The responsibility was first, as soon as we came, it depended now how old those children were. There used to be 4 years old to 6 in one group, then there would be 6 to 8 in one group, then be 8 to 10 in one, and then 10 to 12, and then I must have been 13 at that time. I don't know how old I was, but each older girl was given the responsibility of each group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in some dormitories, there were even 8 beds on one side and 8 beds on one side, but they were slightly older, so they were able to do more things for themselves. But the supervision was mainly to see that each bed was stripped every morning in case somebody had an accident of ulti.
You mean the sheets had to be changed every...
No,
stripped.
By
Okay.
stripped, it means that they had to be pulled off the bed. All the bistar had to be pulled off. And then while we went and brushed our teeth, they had to be put down on the ground so that they got aired. And anybody wet their beds, the little children, then those sheets, of course, would be changed and their bedding would be put out on the balcony where the sun came. If it was a rainy day, then it was a big problem. The beds had to be provided more by the school. Bistars.
So what kind of mattresses did you have?
Mattresses were very well made. They were made by Koya. Koya was like the cover of the coconut, the rough thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know what was Koya, but they said it was Koya. I'm sure it must have been that because it felt rough. It was not, but it was tight. It was not loose and spongy and pokey or anything. It was like a hard bed, but it was definitely not soft. It was not cotton or snuggly or anything. On top, if we were wise, which we weren't the first year that I came, I didn't bring any blanket to put under my sheet. So I was mostly cold. And I would be very cold and crying in the night because I wouldn't be warm enough. But the following year, I got myself a hot water bottle, which was labeled, and it had to be put into a big box every morning, and then at night we had to just go and pick up a hot water bottle from that box.
So everybody, it could have been anybody's hot water bottle, or was it
No,
named with yours?
our names were there. So
Oh.
those who didn't have the bottles provided by home, they had no hot water bottles. So some children would want to disappear with ours, and they did while we were small. Like they disappeared with our eggs at breakfast.
But coming back to your bedding, so once the bedding was stripped off the bed, who would put it back on the bed?
We had to make it.
All the
All
10,
the
12
8 of
beds.
them or the 10 of them with the help of the children. So they learned.
How to make
And
their
yes,
beds.
and we were taught when we came to school how our beds should be made, which meant that if we had an extra blanket, first the blanket went over the Koya mattress, then a sheet went over it. And if there were little babies like 4 years old and all, and if they were used to wetting their beds through fear of or loneliness, then the parents had already provided them with plastic sheets. So that plastic sheet was put on the bedding so that the mattress was protected.
So now,
Now
so
one
at
sheet
night,
was laid, then a top sheet was laid, then on top there were 2 blankets which we were asked to bring, and a quilt that was asked to bring. The Ruika quilt would come with us.
ruika, you mean made out of cotton?
Cotton. Because there were no comforters.
So it was like a ralli kind of thing?
No, thick,
Thick.
because otherwise how would we keep warm?
Yeah. So 2 blankets plus that quilt
Yes.
on top of you, and you felt like you would benefit from a blanket underneath you. It was that cold.
It was
You
that
didn't
cold.
have any
Because
heating?
we had no heating, no.
No fireplace, no heating, just the
Nothing.
hot water bottles that would go in the bed.
If our parents provided that.
Oh my goodness.
And we weren't allowed to wear any socks or any warm clothes at night. We were just warm nightie if our parents provided us with warm nightie or night suit.
What do you mean by warm nightie? What was it made out
Flannel.
of? Flannel nighties. Oh.
For the winter.
Even that was made at Parsi Industrial?
Yes, beautiful lace and everything. And in summer we had the cotton
So what
ones.
time was bedtime? And how did you know it was
suits,
bedtime?
We didn't have nighties because we weren't
night
allowed to wear
suits.
panties and bras.
Ah. So now, if you had, I remember you telling me that if you had your period, what would you do? You didn't even have pads in those days, right?
No, we didn't have pads. We were asked to provide with lots of hospital flint. Were they? They were square. I think they were big square flannel-like sheets from the hospital. They were thick and they were absorbent and they were soft. But each had to have our name on it. So our names were embroidered on it, and I think we had to have 3 dozens or 4 dozens of them, and we had to have some tape to go around the waist and some pins to hold it up. And we were taught how to use them. They were folded up into several layers, and they were used like pads with
Loops.
We had to just loop it and then pin it.
Ah, so there were lots of pins. You didn't get hurt?
No, I think we got used to it.
And then how would you wash it? Did you have to wash it because
No. There was a room, changing room, especially for girls who had periods, and they had 4 huge baskets, real beautiful baskets. They were taller than us. We couldn't look in, so we had to just throw our pads into it. And every night
they were soiled? You didn't have
they
to
were
wash
soiled.
them?
No, we didn't have to even touch them.
Because remember when we were little, you always made us wash our pads.
Yeah, that is because my mother taught me to wash before I left. Fortunately, I began my periods when I was at home, so my mother taught me.
But then that's what you carried on for us. But when in school, you just put it into this, and then what happened to them?
And then a lady would come and take them away every night. Then the matron would count each one. Matron would be there writing down how many she took and how many she would wash and bring back. So each night she took a certain amount, and each morning, or if the sun was there, she would bring back in the night.
And they were ironed and pressed?
No. She just brought them washed. And then the dhobi would come every once a week, and he would take the whole lot with our other clothes, and then those were washed by the dhobi, cleaned, washed and ironed and brought back.
Do you think that he knew what they were used for?
Probably he knew, but then already they were washed.
So then what? So you had that, and what about your clothes that you like? For how often did you have to wear a nightie to bed, like night suit? When did you put it in the wash?
you see, we also in the corridor, each of us had a little cupboard also, in which extra things were put, like pads were put there, extra toilet paper was put there.
Each one had a cubicle of their own.
Yes, people could pinch from there, but the matron was up and down. All there were two matrons, always on the watch that nobody was up to mischief, and I don't think anything ever went.
So now, when all of you had different classes that you went to, right? Because you were in charge of all these people. So what time was bedtime?
But if we were watching the little children, then straight after our study time, we would take the little children and take them up to bed, which was about 6:30. We would bathe them, not bathe, scrub them. We'd supervise their baths. And
Even 4-year-olds, they couldn't bathe themselves. Then how would they
we
manage?
would supervise them.
Oh.
We'd help whoever we had to help. We saw who needed help. We were in and out of each cubicle.
And what about the shampoo and the soap and everything that those
Everything
children
was
would need?
in a mug. Each one had to carry their own mug to their own cubicle.
Oh.
Everyone had a mug with their toothbrush, toothpaste, their soap, and their shampoo. Everything went, and their towel. So each one went, and the towel hanging. Bachon ke liye there was a small lower place.
So you were talking about your soap and everything being carried, and you helping the little children to the bathroom.
And after that,
what kind of bathroom did you have?
Cubicles. There were cubicles.
So the potty was different.
No potty area. This was just for our baths, with tubs and a place for hanging your clothes and a place for standing or sitting. There was a little, little kind of a seat at the corner of each one.
And when you wanted to go to the bathroom, you didn't have a toilet that flushed, right?
No flushes. They'd be on those, the metal.
Chamber pots, right?
Yes, and the metal. And the doors open from the back, leading outside. So the Jamadar, there were certain times that he would come. I think he came 3 times a day, and there were lines of potties. So we just had to open. If anybody had used it, they had to close it.
So it was only once that they could use it?
Only once we could use it. And then
how many chamber pots were there?
Many. I think there must have been at least 50 on one line, 50 on the other.
Oh my goodness.
Many. And the Jamadar would come, and he would just open the back and take away not the whole seat, but you just remove the pot. Bichare, I don't know. And then there was a place where they could
dispose of it.
And then they would sit and scrub them every day and sun them out. There must have been heaps of pots.
But can you imagine how good that must have been for the environment if you think about it? Because you had no water wastage.
Incinerators. That they put it there. Yes, how good it was for the.
So all your waste went into the incinerator.
And they must have been used for some, I don't know for what.
It's amazing. Okay, so now that was your So that was for your waste. Now the thing is, 6:30 you went upstairs to put the children to sleep. The next day, then what happened?
Then what happened in the night after you put them to bed? Then we had to polish their shoes, keep them all in line for them to wear the next day.
You had to polish them?
Yeah. We had to polish their shoes, keep their shoes properly. We had to see to their clothes if they needed a change of clothes, because they're so little.
So where would you hang their clothes?
On the back of the chairs. Each one of us had a chair. We had to take off our clothes and hang on the back of the chair.
So the back of the chair, and every child had a chair. Had a chair and a bed.
And a little cubicle in which they kept their.
So it was like hospital, more like hospital place.
Exactly, yes.
And yours was the only one that had a little curtain around it.
Yes.
Which gave you that little bit of privacy.
Yes. And outside, everybody had those cupboards, thin cupboards lined.
So did you have anything called lights out, where everybody had to go to bed at a certain time?
Yes. We had lights for a certain amount of time. For the little ones, I think we had lights only till 7 o'clock. And for the grown-ups, we had lights till, I think, 9, 8:30. I'm not sure. I don't recall.
So now the next day when you woke up,
And then after that, we went downstairs, and then we were given our meal, which was as a bonus because we were taking care of the little ones. We got staff meal. So
what
when
was the staff meal?
staff meal was better arranged food, and I think little more meat maybe, well, almost the same.
But it was a privilege.
Privileged food, yes.
So now the next
Nothing
morning,
extravagant.
and the next morning when you would wake up, then what would happen?
Then the next morning, the bell would ring, and immediately we had to first take care of the children.
What time was that?
6:30.
Okay.
I remember that time very well. We had to take the children first, get them all organized to wash and clean their teeth. And were we getting up earlier? I think yes. Yes, I think the matron woke the older girls earlier, so we could be ready before the bell rang for the little ones. And I think they were divided, the little ones in one area and the grown-up in one, the senior ones in one area, so that we didn't disturb the older ones, because they had half an hour extra, so that by then those washing areas would be empty of the little ones. So then the grown-ups could go, or the grown-ups would go first, something like
But
that.
you all bathed at night.
No, the grown-ups in the morning, the little ones at night.
So different times of bathing.
Yes.
So what did they do
Both
when they
times.
woke up? They woke up and the little ones got dressed and they were off. You bathed. So in the morning.
No, we took them down for breakfast.
Ah.
We took
And
them
what did they have for breakfast? Did they have
all
any
had the
special?
same thing. If their parents had given them egg money, they'd get boiled eggs.
And that's what happened with you, right? You were given egg money and someone else would eat your egg.
I would eat up
How?
that.
I remember you explaining that you were sitting on a table and explain that. How did your egg get taken away from you?
You see, I was the only girl who had that privilege in 1949. The school had offered, if you pay extra, your child gets a boiled egg every morning and a pat of butter. Although each slice was given by the school buttered, but if you want an extra half tikya aate the round, and if you want extra butter for your child, then you provide that much money and she can have half of that. So we were given butter and egg money, and every morning by our plate would be kept, and our tables were set. Actually no, the bearer would come and announce, now where is Zarina, which one is Zarina? So I'd get in front of me
A pat
an
of
egg
butter and an egg.
and the head of the table, and that time, after the bearer went, okay, I could walk up.
You just keep passing it till it reached the head of the table.
Yeah, there would be only about 8-10 of us on the table.
And nobody knew that someone was taking
all
your
the
egg.
little ones knew, but each one just looked, because we're all my age on that table.
So there was one person in charge of all these little.
So one person would have a good treat that day.
And it was not you.
No. So that whole year.
So what did you do when you grew older and you were in charge?
No, can't be done.
And did you still continue?
After that, then I told my father, no more eggs. After June, when I must have written to him, because our letters were checked. We couldn't even write and tell our father what was happening in school. No? Every letter was read.
How often did you write letters
Once a
home?
week. Every Sunday, our letters written, and they were taken to the office. They were checked there. Envelopes were not to be sealed. We had to put every letter open into that envelope, and then the principal would, or whoever's class teacher, I don't know who checked them, would check them and then seal them and post them.
Now you talk about Sunday best. That means you used to go to church.
Go to church.
So the thing is, every student, whether they were Muslim or non-Muslim, they all had to go to church.
Wearing the Sunday best.
And so you would listen to hymns and you would pray in the church. You would
kneel
sit
down, we'd
and you would
bow
pray.
in front of the statue.
And so you did all of that.
Oh, I did all that.
And do you remember any of the hymns?
No, I don't.
And then finally, you said there was one student.
Yes, who came and said, no, they can't go to church, because we were just a handful of us. And they can't go to church. Why are they going to church? And she kept arguing over this for weeks. And then finally, I don't know how it got to our parents that must be one Muslim parent must have come and the child must have told the father. So then that thing began.
And then after that, you said that that time was used to teach you how to darn.
Yes.
So then you began darning. That's
Sitting
amazing.
outside. And if our socks were torn, how they would be repaired every Saturday. We'd sit together upstairs. But now that we were free, we could
So,
do
how
it.
was your day and school? I know that you love the mountains and you love walking. So, what did they make you do? I know you always said that about your studies, that on the last, near the exams, you never were supposed to study.
It was just fantastic. But during every day of our school, it was so nice, Sana, that our homework was given according to the time. For instance, if we had done, say, if we had a lot of math, we would be given enough homework every day by the teacher of every subject to manage that evening. We wouldn't be given extra. For instance, we'd be given for 3 subjects because our homework time was 1.5 hours. And after every half hour, each teacher who gave us that homework would be for half an hour. And they would make sure it would only be for half an hour so that we didn't have less and we didn't have more. I don't know how they arranged it, but that time was perfect. We would sit desks apart. In class, our desks were close, but during study time, there was a partition, lakdi ka, wooden partition, which was pulled back between 2 classes and it became into one big hall and the desks parted. I don't know who did it, but it was always separated during study time. And a teacher would be supervising. We couldn't talk and she had a bell in her hand. Every half an hour, then she would ring the bell. So we had to take our books and put them in front. And there were 2 classes doing study together in every area in the school. So 2 of our classes, if I was doing history, you would be doing geography. Our history books would go to one and our geography books would go to one. And then we had 3 subjects, as I said. So all our books were together of each subject from our homework done. And then at the end, the teacher would take them, whoever, and do, I don't know what she would do with them, give them to the one in charge of each group, I don't know, or she sent them, I don't know what she did. But the next day we got our books in class, and then we were taught and given our homework again, and the same routine happened.
And it was always class wise. So, and what were the classes like? It was like class one, class two. Is that what they were called?
I think they did 2 classes together.
And what were they called? Class
Yeah,
two,
class.
three? Standard, what was it?
Standard
You went up to standard what?
9.
Standard 9.
Which was
And
senior
you did your
Cambridge.
O levels, right?
Senior Cambridge, not O
Cambridge.
levels.
And at that
O
time,
levels was supposed to be lower in those days. It was from London, O levels. But we did senior Cambridge, which was from
GCE.
From Cambridge.
Cambridge.
From Cambridge.
Yeah. So the thing is,
And there was also junior Cambridge. In those days, those children who couldn't study much, they did junior Cambridge and they stopped their studies, and then they were advised to go into different fields. Like most of those girls who left at 7th standard, they went into nursing. And they were mostly Christian girls, so they were very happy in going and doing nursing. Many became nurses, and very qualified nurses, because they had after that 4-year course, and they were given a job at the hospital, Mayo Hospital. Yeah, put something in Pindi. Yeah, I don't remember, but I know girls went there.
but you studied all subjects and you went up to your GC senior Cambridge and you graduated from senior Cambridge. But when you were there, they took you up into the mountains. You used to go for walks. How were those? Like you would go. How often would you go?
Every day we didn't go for walks. We had games. We had a field at the bottom of our school. We had to go down to the field. Beautiful big field. We had. What is that game? Netball.
You had netball.
Yeah, we had netball, we had racing, We had this American game,
Oh,
baseball,
badminton?
baseball,
Baseball.
baseball,
Oh.
and we had long jump, high jump.
Did
We
you have
had
lacrosse?
no, we had
La.
high jump, long jump, races, netball. I don't know
Were
what
you
other
good at
games we had.
games?
Not much, but good enough.
I remember you were always good at playing cricket with the boys, with your
I like
cousins
to play and join
and
them, but I
brothers.
didn't excel.
Oh. So now, I mean, like your day that you studied, how long was your day in school? Like with that you had to
We
study?
began exactly, I think, at 8:30, and then we got off at 10:30 for break. 2 solid hours, and then we were given break outside when the weather was good. If it was not raining, table was set out with a pile of bread and butter and jugs of milk, cups of milk.
I remember once you telling me that you had money and you would buy some treacle that
That
used
was
to.
every Tuesday.
And
I
what
tell
was a
you,
treacle?
at 11 o'clock we had this bread and butter and milk. It was so refreshing, so nice to have, because by the time we had breakfast, it would be finished in our stomachs by then, and we were ready to have some refreshment, and that was nice. We could have as much bread as we wanted. And then break was only, I think, for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, so what could we eat at that time? Whatever we managed. And then we had lunch break. We had to take if we were in charge of the little ones, we had to immediately grab them from the class, take them up, wash their hands, tidy them up, do the hair, and bring them down for lunch. They would again be at our table. We'd be in charge, see that they're all eating. We had to serve them, because a bowl of food would come in front of the prefect,
Like Oliver Twist.
and we had to give them
Serve
each a
them.
proper portion.
Oh.
And then they would help themselves to the bread and butter.
Did they have seconds? Did you ever have
Yes,
seconds?
they can have seconds. Jitna us bowl mein rehta, we had to finish.
So now the treacle on Tuesday?
For Monday, for breakfast, we would have, one day we would have a bowl of dal, delicious dal, and a bowl, and with it in a saucer we'd have treacle, which was, I think, gur melted, but it was delicious. And with the bread and butter, it was a treat. No, we had just dal. And one day we'd have porridge in that same bowl and with treacle. So the day we had porridge, we had the treacle along, and the day we had dal, it was just dal.
But there was something that I remember you saying that some man would come and you would buy.
Again, now, once a week on Tuesday, we were given 2 annas to spend. 2 annas, which was like 2 pennies in those days. Okay? 2 annas, this man would come who we'd call Charlie, Mr. Charlie. I don't know what his name was. Why we called him Charlie, I don't know. Charlie Man, we'd say. Charlie Man came after tea time. We had our tea, and then as soon as we came out, Charlie would be waiting there with his box of different goodies in there. But we had 2 annas to spend with what we wanted. We could buy one cake and a patties, probably 1 anna each. Or what I would always buy is a packet of